Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. So this time you guys sent in a quote that really sparked some interesting conversations online. Sometimes you gotta be a lion so you can be the lamb you really are. Dave Chappelle said that. And we're gonna deep dive into exactly what that means, not just like the animal metaphors, but like how does this apply to your personal growth, your work life, your relationships, all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's so powerful.
Mhm.
And it almost feels like a contradiction, right? Like you have the lion who's so fierce, strong, ready to like confront any challenge. And then the lamb who's, representing gentleness and vulnerability,
Mm.
innocence even. But he's suggesting something much deeper here about how those two qualities actually rely on each other.
Okay, so let's break down the metaphors a little bit. When we're talking about like the lion energy, what exactly do we mean by that? We're not talking about just physical strength, right?
Right? It's more that inner resilience, that courage to assert yourself, set boundaries, face those uncomfortable situations life throws our way. It's like that feeling you get when you know you need to stand up for something important, even if it makes you a little nervous.
Yeah, I can see that. And it sounds like that inner strength is kind of what allows for genuine vulnerability. Is that as simple as just feeling more confident so you're less afraid to let your guard down?
I think it's a bit more nuanced than that. Confidence is definitely a part of it, but it's also about having a solid sense of self. When you are secure in who you are and what you stand for, you're less likely to be swayed by external pressures or feel the need to constantly prove yourself. So that inner strength creates this safe space for your lamb, your authentic, vulnerable self, to exist without that fear of exploitation.
So the lion isn't just about like, roaring and showing teeth. It's about creating a safe space for the lamb to thrive. And the lamb isn't about being weak or passive. It's about being genuine and open.
You got it. The source material that we looked at, it actually points out that true strength isn't about suppressing vulnerability. It's about being able to choose when to be vulnerable and when to stand firm, depending on the situation.
So it's about balance.
It is. It's about having that inner balance.
That makes me think about leaders. There's this idea that like a truly strong leader doesn't have to constantly project this image of unyielding strength. Are we talking about that here?
Absolutely. Think about a leader who's confident in their abilities. They can afford to show empathy, admit when they're wrong, even shed a tear if the situation calls for it, because they're not trying to mask any insecurity with aggression or control.
Because that inner lion is already there, providing that sense of security, this balance seems crucial not just for like individuals, but also in positions of power. Let's think about parenting for a second. You might have to like fight hard for your child, advocate for them, protect them, definitely channeling that lion energy.
And yet that fierce protection is ultimately aimed at creating a loving and peaceful home where your child can be their true selves. That's where the lamb comes in. It's not about being a tyrant. It's about using strength to nurture and empower vulnerability.
So are we saying that the key is to find a balance between these two energies? Like not being all lion or all lamb all the time?
Exactly. It's about recognizing that both are essential parts of who we are and understanding when to call upon each one. And that balance might look different depending on the context. Your personal life, your work, your relationships all require different expressions of this dynamic.
That's a good point. So how does this like lion-lamb balance play out in our personal growth journeys? If the lion is about facing challenges and setting boundaries, what role does the lamb play?
Think about it this way. Often what we're most afraid of is being seen, truly seen,
Hmm.
with all our imperfections and vulnerabilities. That's where the lamb comes in. It's about having the courage to let go of those defenses, to embrace our authentic selves, even the messy parts.
So it's like that lion energy gives us the courage to step outside our comfort zones, to try new things, and maybe even fail. And in that process, we discover more about who we truly are.
Precisely. The lion clears the path, and the lamb allows us to explore the uncharted territory of our inner landscape.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we've explored the lion as like a protector and the lamb as our authentic self. But the source material also suggests that vulnerability without strength can actually lead to being hurt or taken advantage of. Can you talk more about?
Yeah, that's crucial. It's not about being naive or reckless with our vulnerability. It's about discernment,
Mhm.
understanding when and with whom it's safe to let our guard down.
So the lion isn't just about protecting ourselves from like external threats, but also from putting ourselves in situations where our vulnerability might be exploited.
You got it. It's about having the wisdom to recognize those situations and the courage to walk away if necessary. And it's like vulnerability is a strength, but it needs to be wielded strategically. It's like a precious treasure. You don't just leave it lying around for anyone to take cake.
So how do we balance this idea of being vulnerable but also discerning? Because if we're always guarding ourselves, that can lead to isolation.
That's where the dance between the lion and the lamb becomes so important. It's not about shutting down vulnerability altogether, but about choosing wisely when and with whom to share our true selves. It's about cultivating that circle of trust.
So how can we be more discerning in our relationships? Like, how do we know when it's safe to let that lamb roam free, so to speak?
I think it's a process of paying attention to how people make you feel.
Mm.
Do you feel seen and heard in their presence? Do you feel respected and valued even when you disagree? Those are signs that you're in a space where vulnerability can thrive.
Makes sense. And this ties back to what we were saying about leadership. A
Yeah.
leader who embodies this balance can create that kind of environment for their team.
Right.
A space where people feel safe to take risks and be themselves.
Exactly. Think about a workplace where everyone feels comfortable speaking their minds, sharing ideas, even admitting mistakes without fear of judgment or retribution. That's a team where innovation and creativity can truly flourish.
And that's a direct result of the leader embodying this lion and lamb philosophy.
Absolutely. When a leader demonstrates both strength and vulnerability, it gives permission for others to do the same.
Yeah.
Creates this culture of authenticity and psychological safety.
Okay, so we've talked about how this balance shows up in personal growth leadership relationships, but I'm curious about the how. Are there any specific practices or techniques that can help us cultivate this lion-lamb dynamic within ourselves?
Well, I think awareness is always the first step. Start paying attention to those moments when you feel yourself shrinking back or putting up walls.
Yeah.
That's your lion signaling that it needs to step in and create some space.
So if I'm in a meeting and I find myself hesitant to share my ideas, that might be a cue to channel some of that inner strength.
Exactly. Ask yourself, what would my lion do in this situation? Would it speak up confidently, assert its perspective, set a boundary, then give yourself permission to do just that?
And what about the lamb? How do we practice being more vulnerable, especially if we've been hurt or let down in the past?
Start small. Choose a trusted friend or loved one and share something that feels a little bit vulnerable for you. Notice how it feels to express yourself authentically without censoring or minimizing your feelings.
And that builds trust, which then allows for deeper vulnerability over time.
Precisely. It's a gradual process of opening up, like a flower slowly unfurling its petals.
So the source material we looked at also mentions this idea that strength without vulnerability can lead to isolation and disconnection. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Well, imagine someone who's always in lion mode, constantly on guard, never letting their defenses down. While this might create a sense of safety, it also prevents genuine connection.
So it's like they're building a fortress around themselves, but that fortress also keeps people out.
Yes.
Right.
And eventually, even the strongest fortress can become a prison. We need that lamb energy to soften the edges, to create bridges instead of walls.
I'm starting to realize that this isn't just about finding a balance between strength and vulnerability. It's about understanding how they actually enhance each other. The lion empowers the lamb, and the lamb keeps the lion grounded in compassion.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's a symbiotic relationship.
Hmm.
They need each other to thrive.
This is all so fascinating. We've talked about this lion and lamb dynamic in personal growth leadership relationships, but what about in a broader sense? How does this apply to our interactions in the world?
Well, think about the challenges we face as a society. Conflict, division, injustice. Often these issues stem from a lack of understanding, a fear of the other.
So where does the lion and lamb philosophy fit into all of this?
Well, imagine if we could approach these challenges with a combination of courage and compassion. The courage to speak truth to power, to challenge injustice, to stand up for what we believe in. That's our inner lion roaring.
And the lamb?
The lamb reminds us to approach those who hold different views with empathy and understanding. It reminds us to listen deeply, to build bridges to seek common ground.
So it's not about eradicating conflict altogether, but about engaging in it in a way that is both strong and compassionate.
Exactly. It's about having the courage to fight for what we believe in, while also holding space for dialogue and understanding.
That's a powerful idea. It's like the lion gives us the strength to stand up for what's right, and the lamb reminds us to do it with a compassionate heart.
And that combination, that integration of strength and vulnerability is what ultimately have the power to transform not just our individual lives, but also the world around us.
It's almost like we're shifting from this like fight or flight mentality to a stand strong and listen approach.
Yeah,
Feels like a much more sustainable way to create change, both personally and globally.
it is. And, the world often demands that we show up with our lion energy.
Yeah.
We have to navigate challenges, advocate for ourselves, sometimes even protect ourselves from harm. But if we're constantly operating from that place of defensiveness,
Yeah.
it takes a toll.
It's like that phrase being on guard,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're always on guard, always anticipating a threat, you never really get to relax and be your true self.
Exactly. That's where the lamb energy becomes so essential. It's about creating space for gentleness, for connection, for genuine self-expression. And as we've been discussing, having that solid foundation of lion energy allows us to do that without fear.
So it's like the lion creates this safe haven for the lamb to come out and play. And in that safe haven, we can experience the world in a whole new way, with more openness, more compassion, more authenticity.
And the beauty of it is that it's a cyclical process. The more we tap into that lamb energy, the more we cultivate qualities like empathy and understanding,
Yeah.
which actually make us more effective in navigating the world's challenges.
So it's not about choosing one over the other. It's about recognizing that both the lion and the lamb are essential parts of a whole integrated self.
That's the key takeaway here. It's about integration, not separation. The lion and the lamb aren't at odds with each other. They complement each other. They support each other. They create this dynamic balance that allows us to show up in the world as our most authentic and empowered selves.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation. It's like we took this seemingly simple quote and we uncovered all these layers of meaning and application. What started as a discussion about animal metaphors has become this profound exploration of human nature and our potential for growth.
And the best part is, this is just the beginning. The more we reflect on these concepts, the more we practice integrating them into our lives, the more we discover about ourselves and the world around us.
So as we wrap up our deep dive today, we want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. Where in your own life do you need to be more lion? And where can you allow yourself to be more lamb? Just something to think about.
Keep those questions in mind as you move through your day. Embrace the strength of the lion and the gentleness of the lamb and see what unfolds.
This has been The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey.